at some point you end up as a manager. And when you end up being a manager, then your writing and presentation skills and how you get along with people are super important. And you rely on other people to do technical things, but you end up, explaining it. So anyway, what a lot of students do in this class that end up doing really well in the class is they will, for all the questions that they solve, they'll draw an illustration, they'll draw a graph. And if you do that, it really helps because you don't miss any information that could help you. So if you were gonna graph this, Villa, you know how to do that, right? Are you?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want, you can graph it and on a piece of paper and turn on your camera and show us what you got.
All right.
Okay.
Um, so I think I did it, but I think it's kind of messy.
Well, okay. You got to work on that then. But you want to show us what you got?
How do I turn on my camera or
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah, there's, okay, there you are. Okay, you're muted, so we can't really see you. I mean, we can't hear you. We can see you, but we can't hear you. Okay, hold it up. Okay, yeah, that looks generally fine. Okay, and so you with me, Villa?
yeah.
So what you drew is an upward sloping line like this, and actually, the most important part to this is the vertical intercept, right? Which would
Yeah.
be at 77. And because it's plus 5 times x, right, we have an upward slope. So a lot of times you'll see me do stuff like this. You notice my graph is inexact. It's more of an illustration, right? And everybody that's been doing this long enough, they know that to communicate the information, what parts of the graph are like important to capture. And in our case, it's the vertical intercept and it's upward sloping. That's what really matters. So so this is at 77. That's our intercept. Let me see if I can drag it to make it a little bit better, right? And then we also know we have these 2 points here, but one of them's already graphed for us, right? X is equal to 0, and then Y is equal to 77. The other one that is relevant is we substitute in 3, right, Villa?
Yeah.
So that would be, and I'll put it down here, at X is equal to 3. And I'll draw another line. This one I'll just make in yellow here. And what's the height of the function at 3 then?
I'm not sure of the question.
Well, okay. So for every function, right, you have and again, this is what you should remember from, not too long ago,
Uh,
right? Every function
sorry,
has,
sorry, Professor. You're breaking up.
oh, can everybody else hear me, or is it just Villa? Can the rest of you hear me? If you guys are able to hear okay, go ahead and put in chat that you can hear me.
Uh, yeah, I think it's just me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. So Villa, are you with me now? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah,
So this equation, right, is a function. It's a linear function,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And the variable that's the domain of the function is x, graph down here, and the range of the function is the variable y, which is graphed here, right?
yeah,
Right. So for every function like this, if you specify a value in the domain, like we did, x is equal to 3, then there's a corresponding value in the range that describes the value of the function at that point in the domain, right? And
yeah.
that's how we graph it. We graph it with an x, y pair. So I'm asking you, if x is equal to 3, what is y equal to?
So 77.
Well, I don't know if it's
Oh,
y is
maybe.
equal to 77 plus 5 times x, and x is equal to 3, then this part right here is 5 times 3, which is
Oh yeah.
15,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. so what's the value of y?
77 plus 5 times 3.
Which is,
Uh,
and it's okay to have a calculator for this class, like,
92.
yeah, which is 92. Even when I teach this class in person, right? I allow students to have a simple scientific calculator. So we said the area under the curve. So can you see now what we're talking about, Villa? So we're actually talking about between 0 and 3, all of this area here. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And do you see what shape it is?
Uh, yeah. Almost like a square.
Well, yeah, except for it's got another name. It's a trapezoid.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this was actually an earlier part of the homework, if you remember, but the area of a trapezoid is equal to the average of the bases, so b1 plus b2 divided by 2. Okay. And just to be careful, times the height of the trapezoid. Okay.
Yeah.
And you should be able to see what the two bases are. Can you see the two bases of the trapezoid?
Yes.
Okay, do you know what their values are?
Uh,
Okay, so I'll point them out to you. This is base 1. Do you see it?
yeah.
And this is base 2. The other one from here to here. And do you know what the length of base 1 is? Yeah or no?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you telling me
Well,
the area or
no. Well, I'm asking you this formula. This formula for the area of the trapezoid,
the
you have to
formula
have
for
is you have to have a value for base 1, a
um,
value for base 2, and a value for h, the height.
yeah, 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 you have it written down.
Yeah, but I'm asking you, we have to substitute in a value. B1 is equal to what? B2 is equal to what? And H is equal to something.
B1 is 92, or
Okay, that will work. But that's fine. And
B2 is 77.
right.
Yeah, just divided by 2.
Okay, and then what about H?
The 3.
Yeah. Okay, so plug it into the formula and tell me what you get.
Um, 253.5.
Yep. And that's just what Greg and Noah got, right?
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that you have to do. And I don't know. I mean, like, everybody is a little bit different, but this is like what you're going to be doing in this class constantly. You're going to be looking at graphs and analyzing them, extracting information, and then, you know, applying the math tools that you already know. So it may take you a little while to work through it, but if you practice, you'll get quick. And I strongly encourage you to practice, because it's going to be important when you're on a timed exam, right? To
Yeah.
be able to document your work and do it all really quickly. So that's part of the reason why we have our infinite practice going. Okay, any other questions about this one?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So let's stop share. Thanks for asking. You know, the worst thing is if somebody, I think that they understand and they really don't, because I went through this kind of slowly, and I can go through other ones more quickly, and I like to ask people that have questions about, like, okay, where exactly are we having an issue? But it's important because actually this first math assignment is a review that's intentional, meaning, like, I picked the questions because it turns out that if you can solve all of these questions, almost everything in this class you'll be able to do. I say almost everything because there's a few things that are a little bit more subtle. They, require combining a couple of different pieces of these types of problems together. But in terms of actually the math level, if you do all this and you're comfortable with it, you're good. The only difference is going to be, and it's hard too, I gotta tell you, so I don't want to make this seem like, oh, well, once you've got this, like, don't worry. The problem, as you'll see as we go forward, in exploring the theory and applying it to problems, because this is, intermediate microeconomic theory, right? Is the language, right? it's not the questions aren't going to be like they're in a math textbook where it's like, this is a linear equation and solve for X. Instead, we're going to be asking you questions in the language of economics, and you're supposed to know that they correspond to mathematical concepts, right? So that's part of what the theory does, is it associates the meaning of particular words with mathematical concepts. Again, that's what all applied mathematics fields do. So a lot of what we're going to be doing is learning like the language of economics. But in terms of the math, it's just this. So it's good for us to, in the beginning, kind of take our time and go through this stuff sort of slowly. So let's talk about question 12. Ben Garcia, you here?
Yes.
Okay, so Ben, I'm gonna put you on number 12 together with William Brady. You here, William?
Yeah, I'm here, Professor.
Okay, thanks. And Michael Barbie, you here?
Yeah, I'm here, Professor.
Okay, so I want to put you on number 13 together with Tommy Nguyen. Tommy, you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this way we can work a little bit quicker. We'll do the two together. So 12 and 13, go ahead and work on them, and then we'll talk about the answers in about 4 minutes. Okay. Okay, we're back. How are you guys doing? And by the way, most of the time I have the chat closed. So if you're going to ask a question, like try to do something to get my attention. Like Michael, do you want me to answer your question, Michael? I see Andres did, but do you want to hear my answer? Okay, I'm taking that as a no. So that you don't have your mic on. Okay, so let's go to our team for number 12. Okay, so Ben and William.
Yeah, so I got a 238.
Okay, what about you, William? What'd you get?
I got the same answer.
Okay. Ta-da. Okay. And what about our team for number 13, Michael?
I got 190.
Okay, Michael got 190, and I was Tommy Nguyen. What'd you get?
I also got 190.
Okay. Okay, Tommy and Michael. That's applause. Good job. So does anybody have any questions about either one of those? No? Okay. So number 14, at what value of X do the two lines intersect? And at what value of Y do the two lines intersect? Okay. Well, I think that's pretty straightforward. So let's see. I'll tell you what. So it is 8:21. I think we have time to do one more of these really quickly. So Abigail, you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So obviously 14 and 15 go together. So why don't you be in charge of 14 and 15? And I have Daniel Arquila Ponce. You hear Daniel?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you with Abigail on 14 and 15, okay?
Okay.
And I'll give you guys about 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes to do it. And okay. So hey, Michael, I saw you responded. Do you have your mic this morning?
Yes, I didn't. I'm sorry. There's a lot of Michaels. I didn't know you were talking to me.
No, Michael Quintana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I did. Sorry.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the integral thing. Okay. And I will tell you, I've had students that are double majors in math and econ and other things too, electrical engineering, computer science, like that. People that are great at calculus. Okay. And they've just bombed in this class, and it's not because of their math skill. And you know, the problem that a lot of people have, and so one of the things I would encourage you to do is the sort of techniques that I'm demonstrating to solve the problems, even if you don't end up using them to document your work on the exam or on your homework, that you at least do them a couple times before you switch over to the calculus so you can see how things line up. Because as you remember, the indefinite integral, right? What do you end up, and I don't know how many math problems you've solved with using integrals and like for differences in areas and things like that. But what do you end up with for the indefinite integral? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me bring up my the homework. I've already kind of worked on it a little bit.
Okay. And remember, I'm just talking about math, the indefinite integral, right?
Yeah.
Of a simple function always has a constant that's undefined, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I wasn't sure on how to do it, so I looked it up and I kind of just took like the antiderivative and then subtracted the two equations.
And that's what the antiderivative and the indefinite integral. The antiderivative has a constant, right? C.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And that constant is defined by the context of the problem, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't know where C is coming from, and if you have two equations, then you have two unknown constants, right? So where students have fallen down, one of the places that I've seen is they start doing their antiderivatives. They just forget about the constant because, you know, in a math textbook, they'll tell you, oh, assume that C is equal to this, you know, 0 or 100 or whatever. And what happens in some of our problems is that if you use the simple techniques and you draw things out, you're implicitly finding what the constant is based on the context of the problem. But if you just do it all with calculus, sometimes you get the constant term wrong, and your whole answer will be wrong. So be careful. That's my warning, because, you know. So you understand what I'm talking about, Michael?
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I just couldn't figure out how to do it, so I kind of like YouTubed it, and then they showed me the area how to do it using integrals, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do it that way.
Yeah, and it's totally cool, but be careful, because if you get really comfortable with that, and then you hit a problem where the constant is important and you assume it to be something that it's not, then and you just throw the C away. Like all of your answers actually at the end, they should have plus C. And you don't know what C is, so you're not sure you got the right answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so be careful.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I hate to see students who are really enthusiastic and comfortable with the math crash and burn when it comes to exams and stuff like that because of not knowing what the constant is. And anyway, it's a shame. Okay, so let's go back. Abigail, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so why don't you tell us number 14?
Okay,
What'd
just
you
the
get?
answer. Okay,
Yeah, just x is equal to.
I got x is equal to 17.167. It wasn't like a solid
That's
number.
fine.
So okay, yeah, that's what I got.
Well, that number's still solid. It's just
Yeah,
not
I
an
know.
integer.
Yeah.
That's fine. You know, we're good with that, right? Because, and like I told you, dollars and cents. You know, so you know, try to be precise to 2 digits at least. And what about you, Daniel? What did you get for 15?
For 15, I got -99.
Okay, so do you both agree with each other?
Yes, I did on the first one.
And
I
what about
didn't-
you?
I didn't get -99, but I'm not sure if I was doing it correctly. So
Well, you got your number, right? Which is X, right?
yeah.
And if you plug it, you said your number was 17 point whatever,
Hmm.
and you plug that back in for X into either one of these equations.
I got a positive number.
Yeah. Right? Do you see that, Daniel?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that, Daniel? Do you want to go back and reevaluate? Well, let's see first if we agree, if Ignithium agrees. You said, Abigail, you got 17 point.
0.17, I guess, if you're rounding to 2.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yay! And look at that, right on. Right. This is again what you're always looking for. So if it says yay, you know the system, like if this was on an exam and you're actually putting it in, the system scoring you correct. If you put in a wrong answer, it'll say, the submitted answer is incorrect. Try again. Okay. All right. So Daniel, do you want to revise your answer then?
Yeah, I do. Let me take a look really quickly.
How about 72.68? No?
I have 49.5 right now.
Okay, well, let me see. Oh, you know what? You're probably right. I was calculating over here. Yeah. So, okay. Is this what you got?
I was doing
No, it's not what you got.
I was doing the other question.
No. Which one? 14?
I was doing the one where it was what value of
X or Y?
I
You're supposed to be a Y
I had set
person.
both equations to X and then set them equal to each other. Damn,
I don't know. That blows my mind. I'm not sure. You set them both equal to X. Are you talking about 14 or 15?
I did the wrong problem basically.
Okay. Which problem did you do?
I did 14. 14 and 13. It looks, or
yeah,
no, 14. 14. Oh wait, tripping here. What is 7 minus
Okay. Well, okay, Abigail, you agree with the answer to 15 though, right? Because we just put in 17.17, which we said was the answer.
Yeah, I
to
got
14.
38.33.
Yeah. So that would be, 17 times 2 is 34. So it's 34.34 plus 4, which is 38.34. But it's off a little bit, right? And that's because of like the rounding error stuff. But look at this, 34.34. Oh, wait a minute. That should be close enough.
Should be 38.34.
Oh, sorry. Jeez. Okay, 38.34. Thank you. Okay, there you go. We good? So I'll say good job, Abigail. And Daniel, you still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So tell me, do you know where you went wrong?
I'm trying. I can't really, because
You gotta tell me which problem. I mean,
I'm looking at
if-
15 right now.
okay, well,
I'm looking at 15. I understand 14. I got 17.17. Did you guys input the x value into the next equation?
yeah. So
That's all you did?
yeah. So
Okay.
this is what you should remember, and I know you've been doing this because actually, I have an 8th grader right now, and she's doing this. 2 equations, 2 unknowns, substitution and elimination. So you take, for the first one for 14, right? Y is equal to this, and then Y is equal to that. You substitute the value of Y on one side for the other one. So you just end up with, 4 plus 2x is equal to 107 minus 4x.
Exactly.
And then you solve for x. So you eliminated one of the equations, right?
Yeah.
And then you take that value you get for x and you substitute it back into either one of the original equations, which is the y is equal to this or y is equal to that. And you get the same value for y, right? Because that's where the lines cross, right? So they share a point in common, and you found the x value corresponding to that crossing point. And so since it's the same point for both lines, then you can pick and say, okay, I'm going to evaluate like we did before. We were evaluating, right, the function at a point in the domain. You can use either of those functions, and they share the same point in the range, which is the same y value. So you can substitute that x in and find that y using either one. So just like I did, the 17.17, I decided to substitute it in to the second one because it's 4 plus 2x, and that's really easy for me to calculate in my head, right? So 2 times 17.17 is 34.34, right? Right?
Yeah,
2 times
yeah,
17 is 34. And then I just add 4, so I get 38.34. So
yeah, I just overthought the whole process, and I get it now, though. I fully understand now.
okay, good, because you're going to do tons of problems like this in this class. So that whole substitution elimination thing is
Essential.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy essential. So, because if you think about it, what we end up doing in this class, and I'm gonna close this down, and then we'll move on to the next section of the class. But supply and demand most often are represented as 2 linear equations, and the equilibrium in the market is the point at which those 2 lines cross. So boom.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah, supply and demand. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys. We're a little bit over time. I'm gonna give you guys about 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene for the main lecture. Okay, see you guys in a minute. Cool. So last time we got together, and I also, want to preface everything that I'm going to say by noting that the analysis that we do can kind of be conducted at different levels of sophistication. And, I try to present things at a very sort of like basic level first. And then you'll notice as we go forward and talk about them in more detail that there's subtlety. So, you're in my feed, Abigail, so I'll talk to you. Are you there? My
Yeah,
dog's
I'm here.
barking. Yeah. So, have you ever heard anybody say that sometimes lies are useful?
Not particularly, but I can
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. So, and I don't even mean like, intentional deception, right? What I'm talking about is explaining something in a straightforward way that really isn't quite so straightforward. So like people kind of get like the first level concept, and then you can kind of like dig through it. But the first level concept is, it's really important. But if you don't at least get it kind of, even though it's not quite right, it's like I don't know, like a Picasso, right? There, you can see there are flowers there, but they don't look like real flowers. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
those types of lies you'll find all over in academia, but also in economics, because the truth is so detailed and subtle that it takes a while. You have to start thinking about it, and then you can start to kind of, once you pick out the details that make the simple explanation false, then you can kind of whittle it down to something that's closer and closer to what's true. Einstein, he's associated with a lot of famous quotes, but I believe one that's often attributed to him that I like is make something as simple as possible, but not simpler. So we're going to start with things being as simple as possible. So one of the things that I told you all about last time was really that throughout this whole class, we have two primary concerns as economists. And, actually, I would go almost so far as to say that other than addressing these two primary concerns in our discipline, within context, we have environmental economics, we have industrial organization, we have labor economics, we have health economics, we all these different subfields of economics, but they all end up doing these two things. And there's nothing else other than this in our whole discipline. And I guess this is the first useful lie that I'm telling you. The only other thing I can really think of that plays a prominent role is actually data. So we might start out theoretically analyzing demand and supply, for example, but in the real world, you've got to calculate what are the parameters in the equations using statistical analysis to begin examining things like equilibrium. So you need data too, but we're not concerned with that because we're just doing theory right now. And but the two primary concerns are, describing the equilibrium, and that oftentimes just means prices and quantities. I say prices and quantities, but generally, right, we're talking about one good at a particular point in time. So it's a price and a quantity. It's just a description. And it's also, to some extent, a prediction, because if our theory is any good, we should be able to analyze and predict what's going to happen with price and quantity. And then the other one we said is this normative issue of welfare, and I'll say / efficiency, because actually welfare and efficiency are two sides of the same coin. You can't talk about efficiency without talking about welfare. And by welfare, we mean some way of characterizing the well-being of society, which is a really lofty goal, right? As a result of the economic mechanism that you're analyzing, the particular outcome in terms of the distribution of resources. How does it affect people? And I will point to something that will kind of help. And that is that what you're doing right now is you're moving from a perspective and a mindset of what's going on in the economy as a consumer, okay, to a perspective of an analyst, okay? And there's a difference there. So since I was talking to you, Abigail, we haven't chatted that much, I'll talk to you again. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So tell me about you personally, right? Do you ever think about how the economy affects you? I don't know if you go out, you look at prices. My dad always complains about milk prices when I call him.
Sometimes it depends on the item or stuff like that, or what's going on in my life.
Yeah, well, can you think of anything that you purchased recently or whatever, and you were like, eesh? Like, I'll tell you my personal story. So I don't know, like a year or so ago, I bought AirPods for the first time. And when I first bought AirPods, because I would buy AirPods for my kids and things like that, but I'm like, I don't want AirPods, like, come on. And so I waited, and then they were like on sale, and so like I got a good deal, and there was a discount. I only got the first pair of AirPods for less than $100. And then I started to use them, and I was like, yeah, these are really useful. And then I found out that they work fine for like Zoom meetings. And then my AirPods broke.
And so what happened? Yeah.
Are you crying now? Your AirPods broke. Yeah, I was,
disappointed.
Oh yeah, disappointed. But you know what I was more disappointed by? And that is that the price of AirPods, they were no longer on sale. So I shopped around and all the rest of it, and I ended up paying, over $130.
But you got them again.
Well, yeah, because they were like too useful.
I'd be crying.
Yeah, and so yeah, but I was annoyed. But obviously, there are lots of things going on. The pandemic, the demand for AirPods was high, blah 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 blah. But anyway, I had to pay, much more than I paid for them the first time. I was really disappointed. Right. So that's me personally. I don't know if you have a story to share of something you buy. A lot of times gas prices are very reasonable right now, but a lot of times when I talk about this stuff in class, students will complain about gas prices.
the only thing that I wanted to build my own computer before the pandemic hit, and so I got money for my birthday, which was right before the pandemic. And I was looking at parts and stuff like that. And then during the pandemic, everyone decided to build their own computer, and all the prices like rose like crazy.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I gotta ask you a question, which is, why did you want to build your own computer? Like, I've done that, and my son did it for gaming purposes.
Yeah, like gaming and the experience of having to
Yeah.
say I built my own computer
I
is
would
kind of
build my own
cool.
computer.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I would never do it again, only because I have come to the conclusion that, what operating system were you going to use?
Like my CPU, like
No, just the software. Like, were you gonna have a Windows box, or it was gonna be
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna
Ubuntu
do.
or some other?
Yeah, I was gonna do just Windows. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think Windows stinks. I wouldn't. That's why I wouldn't. Windows is just like garbage, wrapped in garbage. So never again would I do that, unless I was gonna do like Mac OS.
Yeah.
But anyway, so but I digress. But yeah, okay, so that's a good example. But I just want to let you know that for most of us, for everybody out there right now, you all almost certainly think about things, and this is not an insult, it's just, it's human nature, from your perspective, right? So you're like, this affected me this way. You're not thinking, oh, well, gosh, look at, I don't know if you're getting an AMD chip or an Intel chip motherboard for your computer, or, some special graphics card. But the issue is that you were going to be worse off because you're paying a higher price, right? But the manufacturer and supplier is better off, right?
Yeah.
And as an analyst, what a lot of students kind of have a difficult time with is, remember, the manufacturers, the distributors, they're people too. And you can get into a lot of kind of like subtleties about it. But the facts remain. When you think about like Intel Corporation, occasionally, and it depends, it goes hot and cold in terms of what's on people's mindset. But sometimes people are just like, they hate corporations, and they're like, I get students coming like, evil corporate overlords, blah, right? But you know what? It's because of the evil corporate overlords making gross profits, meaning grotesque profits, right? That my retirement is going to be better.
Facts.
So if you don't have one now, you'll probably have one soon, a 401k plan. And I actually, as part of the California Public Employees Retirement System, which is the largest private investor in the United States, the returns from owning stock in Amazon and Tesla that CalPERS is making right now mean that my present contributions need to be lower in order to reach a benefit target in the future. And if my contributions are the same, my amount of benefits are going to be greater, because all of those profits ultimately end up being distributed to shareholders. Now, it's true that the CEOs and like Jeff Bezos, he owns a big chunk of the stock, so he's getting a big chunk of the profits too, and that's kind of a separate issue. But more generally, the shares of all these companies, and I don't know who you think is the most evil company out there, but whether pharmaceutical manufacturers, or their telecoms, or their oil companies, or I'm trying to pick something that sounds pretty awful, but the Baby Seal Fur Incorporated, they're companies that usually, if they're public companies, they have lots of shareholders that are just average Joes. I put myself in that category because, in addition to being a professor at Cal Poly that is a CalPERS member, all of the janitorial staff and other people are CalPERS members too. So when Baby Fur Seal Inc. Makes profits, and those get distributed to the shareholders, we're all better off. Okay, and so it's important that at least you understand going forward that when we talk about social well-being and we see, let's just call it a high price for something, sure, there are individual winners and losers in the market. Consumers may be worse off and producers may be better off, or it might switch around, right? Where prices drop and consumers are better off and producers are worse off. But we do not differentiate. We'll note the winners and losers, right? But from an analytical perspective, looking at the distribution of resources in society as a whole, we treat people that are getting the benefits from production the same as we treat the people that are getting the benefits from consumption. Okay, and so we're interested in measuring social well-being, and it's important to understand that you have to kind of suspend your personal perspective of knowing that you're a consumer and gosh, prices went up or went down, like, is that a bad thing or a good thing, from looking at society as a whole. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so these are the two things that we want to do, and they're connected. And notice this. First, fundamental welfare theorem. Does that sound like it's important, Abigail?
Yes.
Yeah, right, because it's the first.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being a winner, right? Like, or if you think about the Constitution, right, the First Amendment, like, they don't put the junk at the top, right? Yeah. They're not like, oh, all these, other things, like, we're gonna put that first, right? You always lead with the big thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's fundamental, right? Which means like it's like basic. And anyway, so yeah, this is the most important result in all of economics. And you all know it, and I'll call it first fundamental welfare theorem version 1. This is the first lie, okay, but useful, right? And that is that competitive markets are efficient. Okay. Now, what that does is it connects, right, these two things. One is we're describing a type of equilibrium, and secondly, we're saying something about its welfare measurement. Well, we have to kind of understand, and there's a lot of subtlety in here, the competitive market stuff is there are different types of detail, right? You could talk about a market being generally competitive, or approximately competitive. But the truth is, when we're talking about competition here, and we'll use this theorem sort of casually, you know, it's like a rule of thumb, like, yeah, you know, that looks like a competitive market, generally speaking. It's probably efficient, right? But the truth is, this only works in perfectly competitive markets. Okay, so we have to describe perfect competition, right? And there are three assumptions for perfect competition. And through this course, we'll look at deviations from perfect competition by varying these assumptions. So the first assumption is that there's no market power. Okay. So do you see what I did, Abigail? I kind of said, well, you know, this is a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
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 So I don't know if you are familiar with the idea of market power, but a lot of times when it's first introduced, again, another lie, right, is they'll say no monopoly power. Okay. And you know, I mean, that's okay, but again, it's a lie. But what the reason why they mention monopoly power is that market power really means no ability for a buyer or a seller to unilaterally manipulate the market price. So this is pretty interesting. Has anybody seen what's going on with GameStop right now?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, and I just looked at it this morning. It was down $109. I had to laugh.
Wow. It has begun.
Well, and because it lost yesterday too. So, but what you're seeing with GameStop right now is a manipulation of the market price. And I don't want to kind of go get in all the details, but it's not a competitive market. People are messing around with the GameStop price. But another way of saying no market power, which is better. But notice I said buyer or seller, right? A lot of times people think about monopoly power, they think about a monopolist, which is the sole producer of a good, charging a high price. And I'll just use this word. It's just, I use it in a metaphorical sense. There's no real content to it in terms of analysis. But a lot of people will say, oh, the monopolist is, you know, gouging prices. They're gouging the consumer, right? But, you know, they have an ability to set the price because they're the only one that sells a particular product that doesn't have any close substitutes. But another way of saying no market power is that we see price taking behavior in the market participants. So what price taking behavior means is that whether you're a consumer, you're a producer, you look out at the market price and you just accept that that's the prevailing predominant price and that you can't do anything about it. So you accept it and then you decide either to transact or not transact at that price. Okay. So perfect competition has no market power and or it has price taking behavior, that's fine. And it also has symmetric information. And a lot of times what people will say is that there's perfect information. And again, there's some subtlety here, but the idea behind there being symmetric or perfect information is an extreme case is that because perfect information kind of assumes that there's zero uncertainty, right? So everybody knows exactly what's going on, which isn't always the case, right? I mean, a lot of times, life is a gamble when you buy insurance and things like that. But what symmetric information really captures is the idea that even if there is some uncertainty or some risk involved, one party to a transaction doesn't have information that the other party would need to know in order to trade with them on a fair basis. Okay, both parties know enough about the transaction and the risk that they're not surprised, they're not tricked. That's the substance of symmetric information. And the third one is, and you all might have heard of this before, there are no externalities. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with the idea of an externality, an externality is, remember, we're looking at the welfare of society as a whole. And normally when you have a market transaction, there are two primary parties to the transaction. So primary meaning the main parties, two main ones, the buyer and the seller, right? But when there are externalities involved, there's a third party that is significantly affected by the transaction. So the best example of this, and the only one that I'm going to give right now, is pollution. So it's the most common example and the one that's studied most often. So if you think about, for example, somebody that buys a product that's made at a factory, and that factory generates a lot of pollution. Well, there's the person making the product and selling it, that's one party, and there's the person buying it. But because there's a significant amount of pollution, there might be other people, right, that live and work around the factory if the pollution is local, whose health is damaged, and they bear a significant cost with respect to the production of that product, and they don't receive any direct compensation for the costs that they bear. So there are hidden costs that fall on third parties. That's one example of an externality. And we'll talk more about externalities likely towards the end of the class. It's one of the last things that we talk about. Okay, so here we have this like first and second versions of the first fundamental welfare theorem, and we more articulated what it means for a market to be competitive. And normally, these things are just assumed. And it's also generally assumed that if, so a lot of times you'll see in textbooks, like one of the textbooks that I often use for principles of economics, that talks about price taking behavior. But when they get to describing a competitive market, they'll just say, oh, it's a market where there are lots of buyers and sellers, and the products that are traded are identical or similar enough that it's not like it matters if it's made by one brand or another. And then they just leave the definition of competitive market at that. And so, yeah, I mean, it is true. If you look into any particular market, the market for tomatoes or the market for shoes or whatever, and you see lots of producers and lots of consumers, then yeah, generally we assume, absent some other information, that it's generally competitive enough that the first fundamental welfare theorem will hold up. And that's where we normally begin our analysis. But if you start to dig in to a particular market or particular product or particular example, and normally what happens is you'll see there's something off in this market. There's somebody being affected. There's some problem. People are upset. And usually you can trace that back to a violation of one of these assumptions, that the market might on a first level look competitive, but when you start to look at it more closely, you realize no, something else is going on here. Somebody in the market, there might be lots of sellers, but maybe one of them is a dominant player. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the class too. So for example, when you talk about retail services, so a lot of people think about Walmart and Target, and I don't know, you can add in other stores there as they're selling products, but most of the stuff that's made by Target or that's sold by Target isn't made by Target. Even the stuff that's their generic, Archer Farms brand or whatever, generic brand that they have in the store, it's actually made by another producer under license with Target. And Target doesn't make any of this stuff itself. It's just a retailer. So really their business is providing retail services. Same with Walmart. But almost everybody knows these days, and Amazon is another one that provides retail services, that when you're talking about in-store sales, like Walmart's a dominant entity. They have a big share of the market in retail sales, and because they have such a big share, they have an ability to affect prices in ways that some small retailer wouldn't. So yeah, if you start to look at the details of a market and you're aware of the assumptions of perfect competition, then you can normally tell if there's a problem that it relates back to the market not being truly competitive. Okay, so let's now break down first fundamental welfare theorem version 3. Okay, and now I'm going to say I'll go back to the just competitive markets. Are generally economically efficient. Now we're playing with the other side of it, right? So we realize there's something going on with efficiency. So we have to ask ourselves the questions, okay, what does it mean to be, well, I'll just say efficient? And it actually turns out that just like in the case of competition, there's a couple of different definitions of efficiency. Okay. Now, the first one I'm gonna tell you guys about, and let's see, I'll get someone else to chat with. Let's see. Okay, Jessica Cortez, are you here?
Hi, I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. So are you following us so far?
A bit. I've been really tired this morning.
Okay, time for a second or third cup of coffee.
Definitely.
I'm on my second cup. I'm gonna have to stick it in the microwave in a minute because it's cooled down. Well, okay. So what would you, if you prefer, we could pass and go to somebody else, or do you want to give it a shot to try to be our interactive participant?
I'll try. I'll give it a shot.
Okay. So we were back here and we're saying, okay, there are these two things you have to worry about as an economist. One is describing the equilibrium. The other one is characterizing whether or not a particular equilibrium, a particular outcome is efficient or not, right? And then we said, well, let's kind of join those two ideas together at our starting point with this first fundamental welfare theorem. And the first fundamental welfare theorem says basically that competitive markets are efficient. And then we kind of dug in and said, well, you know, that's not really true, right? What's really true is perfectly competitive markets are efficient, okay? And to have perfect competition, you have to satisfy all of these different conditions. And in particular, right, it's really important that we have buyers and sellers that are price takers. Now we're moving on to this other part and we're saying, well, okay, we got this other version now. We kind of went back to competitive markets because now we know that we've got to be concerned about competition. But we're saying they're not efficient. We're saying, oh, they're generally economically efficient. And so now we're trying to put some meat on the bone, like try to describe in more detail. What do we really mean by being efficient? Okay. And so are you with me, Jessica?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So what economists really mean is, well, I'll say efficiency, definition 1. Pareto efficiency. Okay. Now, what is Pareto efficiency? Okay, well, first of all, I'll tell you, the Pareto efficiency is this old concept. There was this economist, philosopher named Vilfredo Pareto. Nice name. Vilfredo Pareto. And if I was going to remember his date, I think he's late 1800s, but I'd have to look it up to be sure. Anyway, he said that in an efficient outcome, no one can be made better off without making someone else worse off. That's his definition of Pareto, of efficiency. Okay, and it's kind of subtle. I think of it as kind of like, Jessica, have you ever played chess?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Well, it's time to start. It's a fun game, but you've heard of checkmate, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe you don't know, but the way it works in checkmate is you don't actually capture the king that's the piece. Okay. You just make it so that there's no way that the king can be moved where he wouldn't be able to be captured.
Okay.
Okay. So you take away all the moves, right? And that's really what Pareto efficiency is like. It's saying there's no way to move things around in the economy without facing a direct trade-off between one person and another. So the hardest thing to understand about this is that it's economically efficient under Pareto's definition for one person to have everything and everybody else to have nothing. What do you think of that? I mean, it's a pretty extreme definition, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know if you get that or not. But suppose that I am the mega overlord of the earth, right? Everything that is ever touched or gotten, is mine, right? And nobody else has anything, right? Well, that's economically efficient because if I value all the stuff that I have, right? It's mine, I want it. Then if you take it away from me, I'm worse off, right? And if you give it to somebody else, they're better off. So you can't make random person that's poverty stricken and has nothing, right? You can't make them better off without making me worse off. There's no slack in the economy, right? Now, there are cases where you'll have, remember we're talking about our original definition of economics, right, is the study of resource allocation mechanisms. And we study them to see how they assign resources in production and consumption to different people, produce economic outcomes. That's our equilibrium stuff. And then we characterize their welfare implications to see if they're efficient or not. But the big idea for Pareto is that sometimes there are situations where you can actually make both people better off, right? So I said I owned everything, but suppose the only thing that you own is your own time, your own labor, right? And I don't have anybody, because I own everything, right? I don't have anybody to tend to my fields to grow crops. Like if I want to do it, I got to do it myself, right? Well, then maybe we could both be better off, right? Because I might be able to hire you and pay you some money, or give you some land or something to live on, right? And then you could supply your labor. And because I already have so much land and everything like that, I might not value the land I'm giving you as much as I value your labor, right? And likewise, if you only have labor and you have no land, then you might be willing to give me some of your time in order to have a place to live, right? So we could both be better off. It's possible, right? So Pareto tells us that we want to look for situations where you can have a win-win, right? If you can have a win-win scenario where both people are better off, then the situation is inefficient. And and I guess I gotta kind of wrap this up pretty quickly, but so we could change this definition a little bit. I'm gonna write a couple more things. So first, fundamental welfare theorem version 4, which is competitive markets, I'll abbreviate, are Pareto efficient. So now I've been more specific. I know what type of efficiency I'm talking about. Okay. Does that make sense, Jessica?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So, but most of the time, we don't go that deep. We say, we work with this other definition, which is general economic efficiency. Okay. And general economic efficiency has two pieces to it. Let's see if I can move this down. Okay. A situation is generally economically efficient if it is efficient in the production of goods and 2, it is efficient in the distribution of goods to consumers. Okay. So it has these two pieces, okay, but you know, we're kind of not done because we've just kind of changed our target a little bit, right? So do you see what I mean, Jessica? That if I said it's efficient in the production of goods, I still I don't even really know what that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean anything to you? Do you have any idea? If you say no, that's okay.
Like generally, is that what you're asking? Maybe.
Yeah, like I mean, when I read that, I think to myself, okay, so if it's generally economically efficient, it has to be efficient in the production of goods and it has to be efficient in the distribution of goods. But what does that mean? Like,
in terms of production, I mean, when I read that, I would think, say, more than necessary isn't produced.
oh, okay, that's fine. That's nice. But really, what it means, and you're partly right, but we could be more precise without talking about over or under production. Okay, efficiency in production means that all goods are produced at least possible cost. Now, to me, now I feel like I have a better idea. Because now I know you're talking, or I know that the discussion is about, you know, I'm gonna try to move this stuff around a little bit to give us some more room. So now I know what they mean is I have to look at the goods that are being produced and all of them and say, oh, you know, is this pair of AirPods being produced at the least possible cost? Right? And if it's not, then I know that it's not being produced efficiently. So efficiency relates to the cost of production.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And in efficiency, and I also want to point out, because this is just a language thing, that depending upon what you're reading, you may come across. Okay. Efficiency and distribution is sometimes also called allocative efficiency. Allocation means assigning the goods to consumers, like who's going to get it. And so efficiency in distribution means that each good is assigned to the consumer that values it the most. So general economic efficiency has those two pieces to it. It has productive efficiency and distributional efficiency. So let's talk a little bit about distributional efficiency, and then we'll kind of leave it here, and then you know, pick it up next time. So so what do you think that about, you know, efficiency and distribution? Does it make sense to you?
It sounds pretty impossible to enact. My mind
Okay.
went to the PlayStation 5, which has been like sold out since it came out, and
Okay,
costs a lot by scalpers.
Okay, I'm happy to switch respondents. So who's talking right now? Michael
Arslan.
or Arslan? Okay, yeah, Arslan. Thank you. So you can let Jessica off the hook for a minute. So okay, so let's talk about PlayStation 5s, right? Now I'm not gonna say whether or not the market for PlayStations is competitive or not, because all the first fundamental welfare theorem tells us is that competitive markets are generally economically efficient, right? So, okay, that's fine. But let's just imagine that we are talking about PlayStation 5s, right? And we're imagining an efficient distribution of PlayStation 5s, right? What does that look like to Arslan? It doesn't mean that they're not sold out, right? Because it could be the case, right, that, you know, Sony has produced a certain amount based on their productive capacity, you know, given what their costs are, right? And there's a certain amount that's fixed there, right? But now people are going to buy them, and then people are going to get them and own them, right?
Yeah.
What would be an example of an inefficient distribution system for PlayStation 5s? Can you think of one? Give me an example.
Let's see. I mean, the reason I brought it up was the idea of value.
Yeah.
As
Okay.
far as like
fair.
who values it the most, which I would say would probably be someone who like actually wants to
Play PlayStation 5.
right. But
Yeah.
then I thought about it a little more, and you know what? Someone who wants to sell it does value it
Oh,
quite a
see,
bit.
this is a good point, right? Because a lot of times we talk about this in the context of like scalping tickets for concerts and things like that. And the idea is that we also generally assume, and I didn't write this down because it's like an additional assumption, but it sometimes helps clarify things. We also normally assume that these competitive market transactions take place with zero transactions cost, which means that there's no problem of matching buyers to sellers, or if you're going to resell it, finding a new buyer, right? And the distribution that we're talking about is the final distribution of the goods to the consumers that are actually going to consume them. So you know, when you think about, oh well, you know, somebody who's going to resell it, you know, might value it a lot. They would be part of the distribution chain. They wouldn't be part of what we would call our final allocation, which is, you know,
The final
those
consumer.
those goods hitting the final consumer. So but go back, because I think you're on the right track. What is an example of a final allocation going to a final consumer that's inefficient?
I suppose like a lottery system.
Well, yeah, okay. If that had to be final, if those people that were randomly assigned PlayStation 5s, right, would not like go on eBay and offer up or whatever and try to resell them to people who, you know, like suppose you get assigned to, you know, a little old grandma that like my mom, you know, she's an awesome lady, but my mom is a diabetic, and she has been for about 25 years. And I don't know if you all know, but diabetes is a terrible disease, and it can a lot of different things can happen. But my mom has what they call a diabetic retinopathy. So basically, what happens, and you all aren't as scared of diabetes as I am, then I'm going to try to scare you. Just so you exercise more and probably eat more healthily. Right? I'm not scaring you just to scare you. This isn't like jump scares for fun. This is actionable intel, hopefully, to help you to prevent it. But when your blood sugar level gets too high, your blood turns acidic, and so it begins basically eating through your arteries and veins from the inside out. It's basically having acid and, you know, flowing through your veins, right, which damages your blood vessels. But the blood vessels that are most sensitive are the really small ones that are in the back of your eye and your retina. And so if your blood sugar level is too high and your blood becomes too acidic, then it eats through those blood vessels in the back of your eye, and those blood vessels start to bleed and you go blind. So my mom is legally blind, and, you know, she can't see very well, but she does see well enough to play video games on her iPad, like this close in her face. But a PlayStation 5 would be almost no use to her, because she can't really see a, you know, like a television screen very well. So yeah, if my mom was randomly assigned a PlayStation 5 and like she could not resell it, that would be inefficient. Or if you think about, you know, giving a holiday gift, you know, somebody unwraps a PlayStation 5 underneath the Christmas tree, and, you know, they have no interest in it at all whatsoever. And, you know, they have no way to resell it. You know, there's no receipt, they can't take it back, it's not a gift receipt, and for whatever reason, you know, they can't you know, put it up. Well, then that would be inefficient. So what the first fundamental welfare theorem tells us is that won't happen in a competitive market. In a competitive market, all of the goods will end up going to consumers, the consumers that value them the highest. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. So does that make sense, Arslan?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, if you all don't have any more questions for me, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'll see you Thursday morning. Anybody? Okay.